Hello crafty friends, it's Donna here from Donna is Playing Paper. I'm here with part 1 of a 2-part video making 25 cards from one paper pack. Although, with the ideas I've given you, you can actually make about another dozen to 20 cards using the leftovers from the leftovers. Let's get started, shall we? Today I'm using this Tropical Christmas 6x6 paper pack. Although all of these ideas will work for any paper pack, this pack has 18 sheets of paper, 6 different double-sided designs and 3 of each. And I'll also be using the Tropical Christmas Embossed Diecuts. These coordinate and even have some of the same designs. I hope you can pick up the nice glossy image on those. This video has 2 main sections. The first cards are made using the Operation Write Home card sketches from Sandy Olnok. I'm using sketches 71 through to 80. And then later, I'm going to give you a bunch of ideas for using leftovers to make a whole lot more cards so that you can really stretch your supplies. For the cards using the sketches, I'm going to take you through a lot of the things that I do to make the first card. And then after that, we'll go through a little bit more quickly, and I'll only describe things as we hit a new technique or a new challenge presented by a different sketch. I use the dimensions on the sketches to cut my patterned paper. Then, for my coloured paper, I line it up at the same size on my trimmer and just slide back halfway to the next line so that I've added about 1/8 of an inch. This will transfer to being about 1/16 of an inch or 1 millimetre or 2 on each side once I slide the paper into the middle. For anything that sits right across the page, I only add that border top and bottom. For anything that sits in the middle of the page, I put the border all the way around, and then I glue them together. After this card, you'll see the elements already glued into pairs. If I have to place something very straight or centrally on one of my pieces, I often use the lines of my grid mat just to help me line everything up straight. I'm going to use these Merry Christmas sentiment sheets. They're nice and simple. There are a bunch of them in the set and they come in different colours. I'm using mainly the gold and the black today. And I usually do a little bit of a slice and get myself a whole bunch of sentiments before I start. I'm also going to use pre-made card bases just to help things go a little bit faster. I like to use a wet glue for multiple cards. I find I get sore under my nails if I peel back too much double-sided tape backing. And also, the wet glue gives me some wriggle time. Most of the cards have a patterned paper as their background. From now on, you'll just see the patterned paper, but know that there's a card base underneath it. Because there's a little bit of a height difference underneath, I'm going to add some foam tape just to my coloured paper, and I'm flipping the card over to make sure that I use the right length and in the right place. And then it's a simple matter of adding one of those glossy cutter parts, anything will do, and a sentiment. I made 2 of these cards, and you can see them here. The next card calls for 2 different background papers, and so I've chosen to put my glue onto my card base and then glue them down. You can see on the sketch that the leftmost vertical strip has roughly the same amount of card at the top and the bottom and the left, and so we can just eyeball that into place. This time I'm backing my sentiment with some dark green paper as well, just so that it stands out against the busy background. Once again, I made 2 of these cards. Alright, we're on a roll now. This next card has a little bit of an offset piece. Using a thin strip of paper is a great alternative to doing backing paper, especially when the strip goes from edge to edge on the card. It saves a lot of paper. Personally, this time around, I was saving time, not paper. I remember back in the playgroup days when we were making our own homemade Play-Doh, and a friend said to me as I was struggling to get the colour mixed through the Play-Doh, "Don't forget that white's a colour." And so I've used a white band on this card, a backed sentiment and Santa here. These are the smallest foam squares I have, and if I need something smaller, I just snip in from the side and cut them in half. Later, I'll even cut one into thirds. And once again, I've made 2 of these cards with 2 different glossy cutter parts. Don't forget that you can spin your sketches around. I had 2 strips of this ice cream paper left over from the previous 2 cards, and they're not quite the width that the design says, and so I'm going to change the design just a little bit so that I can use these strips up. But because of the direction of the pattern, I'm also going to turn the sketch sideways so that the ice creams are vertical. You can see that this circle is flopping around. I'm going to need to stabilize it on both sides. There are 2 sheets of paper in that big strip and a 3rd one in the middle. However, I think that 2 should be enough. That will make it level enough that I'm happy. And so I'm just cutting a few little semicircles from scrap paper and building up the sides of that main big circle before gluing the whole thing down. When I use black sentiments, I always use a black marker to go around the outside. Pretty much any marker except an alcohol marker is fine for the job. I use a Memento marker in Tuxedo Black. Once again, I made 2 of these cards, and I've chosen some beautiful bright pink cut aparts to match with the pink of the cards. Here's a couple of ideas for using this next sketch, number 75. Some of the papers in this pack were quite busy, and so I decided that I would like to back each of them so that the patterns didn't all bump up against each other. And then I've just popped them up with foam tape. So that's the first way. It does stretch over more of the card when you add the backing papers, or you could cut your strips a little bit narrower and cut your backing papers to the sizes written on the sketch. I'm just popping up my Happy Holidays over that band by using some backing paper. That's one quick and simple way to do this. Another way you can use the sketch is to find a patterned paper within your designs. I've cut this Christmas feast to the sizes recommended and then taken a tiny little slice off again just to get rid of the last of that palm tree on the right, and just left a little space and layered it up. This time I kept them nice and even so that the picture made sense. Now we come to the last of the sketches before the cheating begins. This sketch has a big semicircle on the left, and again a size is given. I used a die to cut that circle out, and then I'm using some of the scraps to prop up the right hand side of that square so that it will sit nice and evenly. Once again, I'm going to use foam squares for my elements and keep on using this piece of red paper that's been on my desk for several cards now to back the sentiment. Nice and easy. But from here on in, it gets even easier. This sketch here has a series of concentric circles. And if you have a look at this design, you have the central circle of the wreath and then the wreath making a circle around it. Small interlude to note that I've just cut the paper slightly smaller than my background paper for this card. The other element on this design is those 3 little hearts. But when you look at this wreath, it has 3 little hibiscus sitting in those positions. I could add more and more and more to this card, but I don't think it would improve it. And so I'm just going to add a sentiment and call that lucky. Similarly, for this next card, I'm going to use the sky from the Christmas feast as my background, but instead of 3 hearts, I've chosen 3 of these glossy cut aparts, and I'm just going to add those on with some foam tape and a sentiment. Done. Alright, back to kind of sort of not cheating. So I'm making this rectangular element. We're using the sizes that are given. But then, if you have a look at this glossy cut apart, where the heart is, there's a treetop. And where the square is, there's a hut. And so I'm going to use that as both of those. It does make things simpler, but I think it actually makes nicer cards because I'm not making them too busy. This one has a fair few layers now, and so I've used foam tape for some of it, and then I'm just building up the back of this green background paper until it feels level to the touch with that foam tape. It only took one sheet of card. And then I'm adding my sentiment and we're good to go. So far we've made 16 cards using 10 different sketches, and this is what's left over. Quite a few strips, one larger piece, and a bunch of die cuts in varying sizes. In part 2 of this video, we're going to have a look at a bunch of ideas for using up this kind of leftovers, whether it's from this exact card pack or from other cards that you've been making. I hope that you'll find lots of useful ideas in the part 2 video. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll catch up with you very soon. Bye for now.